Today, let's look at and explore in detail a diagram that relates to physiology. When we stutter, our larynx, in essence, constricts tightly. It's very similar to how it constricts tightly then, essentially, when food makes its way into the stomach. So, food comes in, a certain type of food, it is introduced into the mouth, and then it goes further next to the soft palate. Next, it falls, and here's the miracle. It doesn't go into the lungs, not into the diaphragm, but where it needs to go, where it will be digested further. So, what causes this to happen? This happens thanks to the epiglottic cartilage, which covers up when we eat and also when we drink water, because otherwise the first sip or the food, and we could die from the food going the wrong way, where it needs to go. Let's look at another diagram. Here we can see schematically what happens to us, right? So food comes in and it goes into the stomach. And when we breathe in, our epiglottis, on the contrary, doesn't close. It opens up because the human body wants to live, wants to survive, right? And the primary task is to saturate the body with oxygen at the moment it needs to. So, with a regular inhalation, yes, we end up with air actually flowing into the lungs. We are getting to a point that affects stuttering, impacts swallowing, and clears the path. That has a strong impact, for example, on stuttering. Besides the fact that it influences swallowing food to ensure that the path is clear, it also affects stuttering, where it needs to go. It affects stuttering. How so? When we stutter, we experience a certain anxiety. Yes, we are scared. It's either conscious or even unconscious based on the experiences we've had before. And actually, what does our body do? How does it perceive anxiety? It performs a simple action. It clamps down on our laryngeal cartilage, just like an ancient person would do when entering a cave or living in a cave. Suddenly, a saber-toothed tiger comes to visit you, and actually, you have only one thought: not to talk to him, not to think about where this tiger came from. No, hunt. You might feel a rush, maybe even a panic attack, and that's normal in this case. And actually you run in speech, something similar happens, meaning the body reacts based on the experiences you've had before. When you've stuttered hundreds, maybe even thousands of times throughout your life, you realize that it will be pretty much the same, and most likely, out of habit, you feel like there's nothing you can do about it that you experienced before. When you've stuttered hundreds, maybe even thousands of times throughout your life, you understand now that it will be pretty much the same, and most likely, out of habit, you feel like there's nothing you can do about it. This is a negative trigger for you. The reflex happens very quickly, but the root of the issue lies in the fact that over a certain period of your existence, a specific stuttering reflex has developed, which is now actively at work. So, when you stutter, your throat either closes completely or halfway. If it closes completely, then you won't be able to say anything. You have probably seen such degrees of stuttering or felt it yourself, that when it is very scary, then you. Just now, I completely and lightly clamped down on my laryngeal area, and yes, my breathing stops. Yes, because there's nowhere to go, neither in nor out, so I can't stay in that state for long, at most a minute or two. If I don't take a breath, I'll die. Well, some people can hold their breath for a longer time, like 5 minutes, and that's something to think about. So the problem of stuttering, yes, on one hand, it's psychological. The negative thoughts are charged by previous negative experiences. But on the other hand, the echoes of physiology also play a role. So, thanks to psychology, to the fact that we've stuttered many times before, we stuttered not only in our heads but also in our bodies. So it turns out it's just the beginning. In my head, there was only the beginning. The consequences were already actually in the body. For example, the speech apparatus. It tightens, meaning the lips are pressed, the tongue is pressed, the throat is constricted, and the chest is tightened with force. This is no longer just psychology, it's a consequence. And you need to work on that consequence as well. So you need to learn how not to tighten the epiglottic cartilage even during stress. What should you do for that? How often? And what kind of scheme should you follow? Because without this knowledge, other knowledge, courses, methods, and so on will be less effective and are doomed accordingly to a lesser degree of figurativeness. So, what exactly should you do to avoid tightening up in any situation? We're already going through this in our course. Even if you're currently taking a course somewhere else. Ask how to ensure that during speech, even when anxious, especially when anxious, your epiglottic cartilage doesn't tighten. Or if it does, it tightens less, and less often. And as one might expect, it didn't have such considerably significant consequences in the form of breath holding, a flow of healing pauses, as is usually the case.